Russians start airstrikes in Syria, and one Arizona senator calls it a low point in American history. Welcome to the Mike Broomhead Show.
Well, I got a message, I got a song. Can I get a witness? Tell me what's going on. I show the people I've been away.
Hey, thanks for being here. Welcome to the Mike Broomhead Show here at AZTV 7. We have got a lot to cover today and a lot of ground to get to. Now, we do each week. You know we have got a special guest this week, especially Mark Brnovich, the state attorney general, is with us, talking about the West Valley Casino. No matter where you are in Arizona, we know that there's an agreement between the tribes about casinos. Well, there's a clarification that needs to be had about the West Valley Casino that is being built. We'll get to that today as well. We always do Broomhead's Best, and on Broomhead's Best this week, it is sports related, and I bet you know what team we'll be talking about. And we do something called Hashtag This, which is the items that are burning up the internet and social media. But we start each week off with the headlines of the week. It's called The Sweep. Let's get to it. The United Nations meetings happened. The summit happened. The President of the United States meeting with leaders from around the world at the United Nations. Something very significant happened. There was a lot of ceremony that happened there. The President of the United States shook hands with the Iranian foreign minister. Now, that is the first time in over 30 years that an American president has shaken hands with somebody that high-ranking in the Iranian government. Very significant because look what's happened in recent months. The Iranians have been shouting death to America at every level of their government, from their parliament saying death to America while taking a vote, their Ayatollah, their religious leader in the entire nation saying death to America to a crowd of people, and their highest-ranking ground troop general saying we will always be enemies. And yet our president doing a ceremonial handshake with him led to a lot of different things that happened during the summit. Most significantly, what's happened is the airstrikes now involving Russia in Syria. Let's get the background. We know that our president met with Vladimir Putin. They didn't discuss airstrikes. As far as we know, there was no formal discussion about airstrikes. Our Secretary of State met with their foreign minister, the Russian foreign minister. No discussions were had whatsoever. And during the floor speech by Vladimir Putin, he called for the U.S. to stop all airstrikes in Syria. 24 hours later, a Russian general shows up in Baghdad at our embassy and demands that we stop our airstrikes. No, what he says is we've got 1 hour. We need to move American assets out because they're beginning airstrikes. So now the Russians start airstrikes saying they're going after ISIS, except the airstrikes are going after the rebels, going after Bashar Assad, who is the leader in Syria. Bashar Assad has gassed his own people, used chemical weapons, hundreds of thousands were killed. On top of that, they have got over millions of people are now being exiled in other nations. We've got such a refugee problem that we haven't seen since World War II. Arizona Senator John McCain, speaking in the Senate and talking with me on the radio show, said that this is one of the low points in American history, that we are being bullied and we are being pushed around. It's something we can't tolerate, but it's something that's happening. So keep your eyes on this, what's happening in Syria, because they are flexing their muscles in Russia. What is going to be our response? That is what's next. Planned Parenthood. The leader of Planned Parenthood spoke in front of a committee. Ohio Representative Jim Jordan, speaking at this event, really goes after the head of Planned Parenthood, Cecile Richards. Now, he was asking her, if you haven't done anything wrong, if these videos that we've seen are doctored, then why are you apologizing? And this went back and forth and back and forth. And the fact of the matter is, the issue between the two of them has no bearing on us anymore because the government, John Boehner has resigned, which we've talked about before, and now calls for Mitch McConnell because the government was supposed to be fighting about whether or not to fund Planned Parenthood. No fight. The House passed a resolution, a continuing resolution, it's called a CR, to fund the government, and it included Planned Parenthood funding. The Senate passed a bill just like it. It got to the president's desk right before the government shutdown. One thing we need to know about the government shutdown, the fiscal year ended. That's what they averted. Before you hear the argument about money in our government and raising taxes on anyone, remember a couple of figures. In America, over the last fiscal year, The Treasury has taken in taxes that totals more money ever than has ever been collected in American history, even adjusted for inflation. So we're bringing in more money than we ever have. We're still spending at almost $500 billion in debt. So if that was your household or that was your business that you owned, what would you say if the good news is we've collected more money than ever? We are doing more business, we're making more money than we ever have. That's great news. But if you're still spending more than that, do you have a spending problem or do you have an income problem? This country doesn't have an income problem. We have a spending problem, and they're doing nothing in Washington to fix it. Sheriff Joe Arpaio is back in court. Contempt of court hearings continue. Did he intentionally disobey an order to stop enforcing federal immigration laws? The sheriff has one side of the story. He's saying that he didn't do anything wrong, but his former lawyer testified that the sheriff can't say he didn't know what he was doing was wrong because this lawyer says he told him specifically that he can't do those things. So we'll see what this means for Sheriff Arpaio. If you had asked me a year or so ago who was the safest person to ever win re-election in Arizona, I would tell you in every election it's Joe Arpaio. Does he face jail time? Is it going to be criminal charges? Will there be hard fines levied? Will he resign as sheriff? Or maybe he just doesn't run for re-election. But that was never a question in the past about Joe Arpaio. Diane Douglas is being sued by the Arizona Board of Education. She misses another board meeting. There's already a recall against her. So it is really something to discuss when Arizona is last in spending for public schools and teachers are more unhappy in Arizona than in any other state in the union. Now, we have never been last in spending. Usually when it comes to education, the state of Mississippi lags behind the rest of the country. Arizona now is last in spending. Is that the end of it? We don't know. Tax incentives are something that have always been important to people, and in every case when overrides are voted on, families are saying no to the overrides. And in this case, maybe it is spending, but we need things fixed. Diane Douglas has been in a lot of trouble politically. She hasn't handled things very well with the public and with the media. We'll see if things get straightened out. Coming up in just a little bit, I want to talk about Phoenix, Arizona, and the bus strike possibility in the city of Phoenix. We'll do that in just a little while, but in one moment, Mark Brnovich, the state attorney general, who also used to be the gaming director, talks about the West Valley Casino. A lot going on in the show still to come. Thanks for being here. Stick around.
The Mike Broomhead Show is brought to you in part by Cliff Castle Casino Hotel, Arizona Christian University, and Sanderson Ford.
Welcome back to the Mike Broomhead Show. There is a casino being built in the West Valley, and no bigger expert on this than, of course, our Attorney General. You are also the gaming director. Mark Brnovich is with us. Thanks for doing this.
My pleasure, Mike.
You were on the radio show with me, and I was so blown away by the information. There's so much we don't know. We keep reading little snippets in the newspaper, and it seems just like maybe a money problem between the tribes. But this goes a lot deeper. What's at issue, and is it a federal court that's fighting this, state courts? What's happening?
Okay, the litigation is in federal court right now, and there's been ongoing litigation for years. And if we want to take a step back, back in 2002, Arizona voters approved the gaming compacts. During that campaign and in the compacts, voters were promised that gaming would be limited and well regulated. There was other ballot propositions that would have greatly expanded gaming, provided gaming at the horse tracks, dog tracks. Those were rejected. Instead, voters went with the limited and well regulated. So the Tohono O'odham, which is a southern Arizona-based tribe, they bought land in Glendale, right by the Coyotes Arena, and without telling the state, other tribes, although they were promising to build a facility in southern Arizona, they secretly went ahead and started planning on buying that land and then building a casino in Glendale. And so that's what the litigation is over, whether those misrepresentations, whether the promises they made to Arizona and other tribes have to be kept, whether there was essentially fraud in the inducement of the contract.
So what is the interest then for the people in Arizona? Because from a layman's perspective, we have casino resorts in the East Valley and we have some stuff out west. What is the issue here for the people of Arizona, or is this just an intertribal issue?
Well, to me, it goes back to whether you're going to keep your word and honor your contract. Because at the end of the day, I'm not morally opposed to gambling. In fact, I actually chair the National Association of Attorneys Generals. I'm the co-chair of the Gaming Committee. I was just in Nevada talking about gambling and the issues associated with gambling, whether there's social cost, problem gambling, underage gambling, but also historically, Mike, gambling has attracted crooks, crimes, and corruption. That's why it's such a heavily regulated industry. So you can't have somebody, a major player in the gaming industry, basically saying we are either going to be unregulated or we're going to play by our own set of rules. And so that's the problem. And I think ultimately what will happen is if that casino is allowed to move forward, what's to stop then another tribal community from buying land somewhere else and building a casino? I think Arizona's going to start asking the question, if it's not limited and well regulated, if they can have a casino at 95th Avenue in Bell, then why can't the racetracks have one at 19th Avenue in Bell? And so I think it really upsets the balance, the delicate balance that was Arizona voters were promised.
So when someone says, what do I care if a casino is in the West Valley? We have plenty of them out east. As a matter of fact, for some people, it may be more convenient to be there. Right now, they've won some battles in federal court, and they lost one recently in a state court. What happened in that state decision that just happened?
Well, the recent decision in federal court, the federal judge denied their motion for preliminary injunction to force the state.
So that was a federal, federal judge.
Judge. That's the problem. There's so much litigation. I mean,
I thought it was a state judge that said they were.
It is. Anytime we start talking about gambling, it's like moss to a flame because it's such a cash-intensive industry. There's a lot of money involved, and so the litigation, latest round, the tribe was unsuccessful in trying to force the state from issuing a license or a permit for that facility to open. So what the tribe now is saying is they're going to open what's called a Class 2 gaming facility. And as gambling's evolved, there's gaming devices that look just like slot machines, but they're actually quote-unquote bingo devices, which under the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act, a tribe can operate Class 2 bingo devices without authorization or approval.
So what's the real difference between a slot machine and the bingo machine?
Well, if you look at a bingo device, I mean, people that are hardcore or they're really into gambling, there's not as many bells and whistles, and a bingo device somewhere, it might be thousands of miles away, bingo balls are being drawn, and you'll see like a small bingo card in the corner, but otherwise may look like a slot machine to your average person just walking by. But the stakes aren't as high, and the action maybe isn't as good, and so there's a debate or discussion whether that's more profitable or less profitable. But the point, at least from a state perspective, is that there will be absolutely no state regulation then at that facility if they open it with Class 2 gaming devices.
So their contention is that under the gaming compact, the agreements with the other tribes, they are able to build one more casino.
Yes, that is their contention, yes.
And they say they can build that building on any piece of land they owned, and the other tribes and the detractors are saying, no, the agreement is you build it where your land is. So you're a tribe from near Tucson, build down there. Is that in essence what the argument is?
Yeah, that's in essence in the argument. And Mike, I'll tell you, part of my big concern with this, as I said, I have no moral qualms. I'm not morally opposed to gambling or gaming, but part of my concern is that the tribes are sovereign nations. And so when you have tribal land that's taken into trust that's 100 miles from their tribal capital, as a law enforcement official, what happens if there's an emergency? Are they going to call the tribal fire department? Are they going to build a fire substation? Are they going to have agreements with the city? Now, we know that Glendale's changed their position, but a year or so ago, and that position can change, they did not want that facility there. And so are there going to be issues with sanitation, with water, like I said, fire emergency services? What happens if someone's arrested? Are they going to haul them down to cells and put them in a tribal facility? I mean, so there's all sorts of law enforcement and public safety issues that haven't been addressed, and it is the land of a sovereign nation, and folks need to realize that. And so that means when it comes to civil jurisdiction, criminal jurisdiction, it creates all sorts of issues that I think need to be addressed.
And since you were involved in gaming in Arizona for so long, is it well regulated in Arizona in general? Outside of this problem, how is gaming in Arizona compared to other places?
We were considered a model when it came to tribal state cooperation, when it came to compact compliance, the regulatory environment. People lose their money fair and square in Arizona. So.
Yes, they do. So would you? Is there a scenario where this tribe could build this facility where you believe you would not be part of a lawsuit, or is there any building that's going to be there that's going to house gaming you're against and the state of Arizona should be?
I think that if that facility is allowed to open and it's built there, it undermines the promise that was made to Arizona voters that gaming would be limited and well regulated. And I think at that point, as a state, the Tohono O'odham Nation is forcing the state to have a conversation that, well, what is our state gaming policy? I mean, gaming here is a billion with a B dollar industry. And when we're struggling to, provide money to our schools, to provide money, make sure that we have proper law enforcement resources, I think a question needs to start being asked. Well, if we're going to have these facilities being built, is it time now to reevaluate our overall state gaming policy?
All right, so let's shift gears really quickly. Last question. You're working on so many different things out of your office. Funding for DCS and advocates for kids. What's going on?
Well, when I was running, Mike, I kept saying that our highest priorities have to be protecting the most vulnerable. And whether it's our seniors and protecting them against predatory scams or telemarketers, we've been super aggressive when it comes to that area and going after, fraudsters and crooks in the consumer protection area. But the other component is protecting our kids. And right now, we have lawyers in our office. We have a 20% vacancy because our lawyers are underpaid and they're overworked when it comes to Child Protective Services cases or the Department of Child Safety cases. So the average caseload right now for our lawyers working that area is 146. The American Bar Association recommends a caseload of 60. So I need the resources so I can keep and retain quality folks to work on these cases to protect our kids, and whether it's in the adoption area, whether it's in severance area, whether it's in termination of parents' rights, we need the resources in order to protect our most vulnerable.
Well, I appreciate you explaining the gaming part of this to us, and whether people agree or disagree with the casino in the West Valley, now you have the state's perspective from someone that ran gaming in Arizona, so at least you've got one side of the story and some of the facts. So thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, my pleasure, Mike. Seriously.
Thanks.
Look forward to being on again.
Thank you. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Mike Broomhead Show. Thanks for being with us. Now, here in the city of Phoenix, where we are, doesn't matter where you are in Arizona, there's ballot measures that get passed that affect all of you. But in the city of Phoenix, a ballot measure passed called Prop 104. It raised the transportation tax by more than double. It did it for over 30 years. It's going to raise over $1 billion a year in taxes for transportation expansion. It was funded by, guess who? The construction companies and the transit companies that are going to make money on the new transportation. Now, we have to have public transportation. I am an advocate for public transportation. Here's the problem. All of a sudden now, there's going to be a bus strike. Where? The city of Phoenix. Why? Well, now you got billions of dollars coming in. There's no way anyone's ever going to convince me that the bus drivers weren't waiting for this to pass to say they need more money. And what adds more insult to injury in this regard goes back a few years. If you remember, in the city of Phoenix, they had a huge budget crisis. So public safety of all agencies, by the way, represented by unions, just like the bus drivers, but the unions that represent Phoenix Police Department, it's called PLE, the Phoenix Law Enforcement Association, and the Firefighters Union, they sat down with the city of Phoenix and they agreed to give back money. They said, take some of our pay back as long as you don't lay off any cops or firefighters. There was a hiring freeze for a very long time. The City of Phoenix Police Department, as we've discussed before, is down about 500 officers from where they were just a few years ago. There was an agreement that they would fully give back that money, not raises, get them back to where they were in just a few years. Guess what happened? The deadline came and went. They were only given back half of the money that they gave up a few years ago. So only half of their money's been restored. They're down 500 officers, and now the bus drivers are going to go on strike? Now the bus drivers want a raise? How about making the Phoenix police whole? And by the way, cops and firefighters aren't allowed to strike. They're not allowed to by law. They cannot strike. So we've got buses without bus pullouts. Get behind a bus on one of the surface streets during rush hour. No one wants to get near an intersection. The light rail that's supposed to help traffic travels down the same roads that the buses travel down. There's no facilities that the light rail stops. There's no water. There's no shade. There's no way to tell if anybody's paying to get on the light rail. And the people in Phoenix raised over $1 billion a year in taxes. And of all things, the bus drivers want a raise or they're going to strike. Just wanted to keep you informed of what the 6th largest city in the country is doing. For the other cities around the state of Arizona, that's what's happening in Phoenix. Follow their lead and follow the money. It's just unfortunate. In just a moment, it's Broomhead's Best and hashtag this. Stick around.
The Mike Broomhead Show is brought to you in part by Cliff Castle Casino Hotel, Arizona Christian University, and Sanderson Ford.
Hey, welcome back to the Mike Broomhead Show on AZTV 7, my favorite part of the show. This is where we do something centered around Arizona, something we all can celebrate. There's no way we were getting out of this week without this one. It's called Broomhead's Best. All right. Adrian Wilson, legendary Cardinal Adrian Wilson gets inducted into the Ring of Honor, and they couldn't have brought him in a better way. So great for A-Dub that he's up there now with other names like Pat Tillman, just where he belongs. Aeneas Williams went up recently, and Kurt Warner. This is going to be a great place for Cardinals for years to come. But how about this Cardinals team? 14 points for the defense in the first quarter. They had 2 interceptions, 2 pick sixes. 2 of the first 4 passes by Colin Kaepernick were touchdowns for the Cardinals. They have got the #1 scoring defense over the last 2 years, and through the first 3 games of the season, 4th most points in the history of the NFL. Let's go Cardinals. Let's see if they can't keep this undefeated streak going. They play the Rams coming up, and the Cardinal fever is alive and well. So there's no way we were getting out of this week with Broomhead's Best not being Adrian Wilson and the Arizona Cardinals. Cardinal fever, man, I just can't get enough of it. Now we talk about what's burning up the internet and social media. We call it hashtag this. Now it's Pope fever. It is. The Pope was in America, and from the bobbleheads that we saw to that picture of that little baby that was dressed like the Pope, it actually gave the Pope the giggles as he rode through town, kisses a baby that's dressed just like him, and he just couldn't stop giggling about it. It was such a great picture. And the other thing is, whether you are Catholic or not, the Pope represents a lot of politics to people because they run the Vatican Bank, and he says a lot of political things when he addressed Congress. And so there were people that were upset, including one of Arizona's congressmen, about some of the things the Pope said. But the fact is, he's a beloved man in the world, and there was papal fever. So we go from cute with that little baby to creepy. Congressman Bob Brady from the state of Pennsylvania went to the podium when the Pope spoke, right after the speech, and stole the Pope's glass of water. And he was holding it like this so he didn't touch the fingerprints. And he was drinking it, and he let his kids drink it, never let them touch the glass, just poured a little water in the mouth for them so they all could taste the glass that the Pope drank from. Little creepy. He also did the same thing when the president gave the State of the Union address. He said he was going to make sure that they fingerprinted the glass to prove that the Pope had actually drank from it. Now, we've all heard of holy water. I don't think that's exactly how it works. But, whether you think it's cute or it's creepy, the Pope's visit meant a lot to not only Catholics, but to a lot of people in the world, as all eyes were watching as faith met government in the United States halls of Congress. It was a good visit. The Pope is gone now. Next week on the show, Phoenix Police Chief Joe Yonner joins us. We're going to talk to him about staffing, about budgets, about crime rates, and how he leads differently because the last police chief in Phoenix left under some controversy. All that's next week. Thanks for being here this week. Have a great weekend, everyone. God bless.